Welcome to Hunters of Unicorns, the 2020 Mastery Mission. We welcome back for his second session, Ryan Precious. Now, in his first session, Ryan shared with us his insight into the interview process. And what would be really useful, Ryan, is if you could maybe give us an example or tell us a story of a time when you perhaps interviewed, your first initial experiences of interviewing within the playbook community.
Yeah, sounds good, Simon. And it's probably almost 10 years ago now, and it still kind of feels like yesterday. And I think what jumps out to me and what I've learned from that first interview and some of the training and development I've got since then as a leader, and what I apply today is still pretty relevant and fresh. So, when I was looking to join App Dynamics, this was in the fall of 2013. There was three people I met with and interviewed. One was Sean Andrew, who was my boss and VP at the time. He was kind of my coach and champion, I think, throughout the process, and just honestly still a mentor and a close friend today. I had an interview with Dolly Rogic, who was running our U.S. enterprise team at the time, and then Joe Sexton, who was our president. And I think at the time, 2013, AppD just hit the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Didn't know a ton about the company. It was actually the first company I ever interviewed with outside of my first job, which was with BlackBerry. And I think a recruiter just caught me, on the right day with my guard down. And for whatever reason, I agreed to go meet them. And I did a little bit of research on the individuals and companies. I think what's almost hard to quantify is after I met with all three of those individuals, kind of just the energy I felt. And I was like, okay, these people are players. These are the type of people I want to work for and with. And there was different kind of tests with all three. In particular, I think the one with Dolly, if anyone knows Dolly, was probably the most memorable. And, at one point in time he was getting close, and he was almost like in my comfort zone a little bit. And I'm like, am I interviewing with this person? Or am I like gonna almost like getting a little scrap here? It kind of made me uncomfortable, but I kind of liked it. Like I kind of liked the intensity and the engagement. And so just that's such a memorable process to me. I can always remember like where I was at that App Dynamics office at the time, the people around, and it just left such an impression. I just left there and called, my wife, and I remember calling my father right away and just being excited about this opportunity. And that was my first entrance into the playbook community, as you mentioned, Simon, and haven't looked back since then.
So what were your expectations before you walked in? You said that you didn't really know much about. Did you realize the process you were entering, and where were you kind of in your mindset prior to this?
Yeah, I was, very happily, employed at BlackBerry. I'd been there my entire career. I'd been promotions. They moved me to a new country, and I felt, although the company was going through some challenges, I always felt, well taken care of. And so it showed up to this conversation, and I think just much like maybe how I approached an interview when I got like my first job out of uni, and just showed up with like a piece of paper, did a little research, and I felt it went well. I think maybe mostly just off of some natural ability and having experience, but I left there, I was like, this is a different level, I think, of expectation in company. I think, when I came back for the follow-up interview, it actually, I did a lot of research because it's like, wow, this is different. I want to work here. I want to understand what makes these people tick. What's this company all about? What's their competition? What's the market? Where is it going? How can I make an impact? And most important, like especially early in your career, take a job for where you could learn as well too. I think obviously everyone has their own decision criteria and matrix, and compensation is important, and upside of a company, but who are you going to work for and with? Because those are skills that will get you the next job and the next job after that. So I think just after that first experience, I realized I kind of needed to up my game. I remember connecting with Sean after that and how I could better prep and felt like I could better execute. I'm sure he probably, looking back at it, appreciated me taking the initiative and and that coaching and drive. And just learned a lot through that entire process.
Yeah. Looking back at that interview, obviously you mentioned before around some of the attributes that they're testing and people within this community are testing, such as the intelligence characteristics, coachability. Can you go back to that time and can you think of any examples, or can you remember them testing you around specific questions?
Yeah, it was kind of more that second and third level I don't think I was used to. And that I so much kind of appreciate, and kind of getting uncomfortable and understanding the why and going deeper. I felt like, I've made it. I got my master's in business, and I've always kind of, done well, and I'm doing really well at BlackBerry, and I had probably some irrational confidence from my own experience. And then, just breaking it down and, why have you done well? Where's pipeline come from? How do you recruit? How do you develop people? How do you promote? How do you retain people? And, I felt good about all my answers, but I just wasn't expecting almost that level of, inspection and command of my business. And, thankfully, I think I answered those questions well enough. They wanted me to get a seat on that rocket ship at the time, and very thankful and grateful for that. But I realized, like, wow, as a hiring manager, look at all the questions and process I'm going through to come in. I need to probably start upping my game for the people I'm hiring, and versus just showing up and, making a hiring decision after meeting someone for 60 minutes. What I've learned is like, that's a $3 to $5 million decision you're making when you hire someone. When you look at the time that's put in, the time to ramp, the time to develop, the time that you realize maybe I didn't get the right person, how you try and coach them up, eventually manage out. And then you start the process all over again. I just know how much sleep I lose, or how obsessive I am over, 7-figure deals within my company. Are we having that as a hiring manager, that same obsession with the talent we're looking to onboard?
You've mentioned a few times that these guys, it was different. You said that these guys were a different level. You've kind of repeated that a few times. What was it about that? Was it their intensity? Was it their focus? Was it their ability to ask questions? What was it about that really had that impact on you?
All of the above, I think, Simon. All of the above. I think it's asking the second and third level questions. And, hey, you attained this number this quarter. How did you get there? What's the breakdown? Was that self-sourced pipeline? Was that through marketing? Was that net new logos? Was that expansions? And normally, at interviews I had given previous to them, it's like, oh, you hit your number. Good job. Not like digging in, the why behind it. That absolutely, that level of intensity, and just kind of having to be on point and on your game that entire meeting. And just, I think the level of professionalism and expectation as well too. And I loved it. I was just leaning into it. I'm still excited about it. Like I said, I think that was about 9 years ago now. And I think just, if they're operating an interview this way, I felt really confident at the time. There's a million SaaS companies out there today. This is a time when App Dynamics was like a pre-unicorn. I think that mitigated, I felt like, a lot of risk from leaving, a well-established publicly traded company to taking, an educated bet and an educated risk on a pre-unicorn SaaS company, because I kind of had a belief in the talent there as well too. So that made a kind of a big decision for me, was that risk reward, and that was absolutely mitigated through the interview process.
Would you say you bought into the people more than you bought into the technology at that stage?
Yeah.
It's obviously Hunters and Unicorns. The podcast series was very much around, is it the tech? Can you become $1 billion valuation company without the people, the hunters? Obviously, what is it? Can you have unicorns without the hunters? And I suppose, just reflecting on what Ollie's just kind of mentioned to you about the fact that you did buy into the people, do you think that, understanding this interview process, how crucial is it for the success of these organizations, and why do they take this interview process so seriously?
It's both. I think you got to have the product, you have to have the addressable market, and you have to have the execution. I think it's hard to say, one above the other. I'm sure some people will argue we're so good at sales and executions, we can sell anything. I'm sure product people would say, hey, we have the best product. Maybe we don't need this level of sales. But that's where I think true unicorns happen when you have both. You have the product market fit, you have the TAM, you have the leadership team, and then you have the sales process, the sales discipline, and that level of hiring. So absolutely, I think, both is required.
I suppose in terms of the story, obviously, you've mentioned that you had this initial kind of first interaction, you upped your game. How did things then materialize beyond that? Was it just plain sailing all the way through to the end, or were there some ups and downs along the way?
Yeah, I think there was ups and downs outside of probably the leadership's control in mine. I joined AppDynamics a year and a half later after that initial interview. Partially because there was a visa, a green card, waiting in the mail. I kept in touch with AppDynamics for almost a year and a half. They kept in touch with me, and then it ended up working. We came together towards a partnership almost a year and a half later. So that also taught me like the long game of recruiting. And some of the best people I've recruited now, it's not just this 2, 3, 4 week sprint. Someone's taken years. I just extended an offer to an individual going to be joining us in a few weeks. I've been talking to him for 2 years. Finally, it's, right place, right time. And I've had a number of stories like that. And I think just that interview process have left such an impression with me around getting the top people and the top talent. A players always find a way to win. I could hire, I could have the best product, the best onboarding, the best playbook. If I get people that are B and C players, and I know that's somewhat subjective, but coming in and maybe they're not being as coachable as you want, or don't have that right level of drive, you're not going to win. But even if I just do a mediocre job at onboarding, even if our product's not exactly where it quite needs to be yet, if we hire A players, they're going to find a way to win. They're going to attract other A players, and you get that ecosystem cranking from there. So that initial interview has just left such a lasting impression, and that's just probably one of the biggest efforts I have in my job as a sales leader. And I had an interview before this podcast. I got to follow up with a candidate who's probably texting me right now, after this podcast, and it's the biggest part of my day. And if you think of, McMahon's playbook, recruit, retain, revenue, recruit is first, for a reason. And I think just obsessing over the talent you can get, especially the growth, a lot of unicorns go through. I've done over 1,000 interviews in my career, and only a smaller percent of people have actually been hired. But once you're in and you go through that process, I've been fortunate to hire people I've been at other firms with and rehired them again here because they've nailed that process. They get on board, they're coachable, and then it just makes it, kind of easier going forward to roll with that same team because you've been through battles and been through the trenches with them.
Amazing, yeah, amazing. I think it's been fascinating and so interesting for you to really share your story and your journey. And what's interesting is 10 years ago you had this interview that was a little bit surprising, and that really kind of spurred you on. And it's amazing to see the trajectory of where you started by seizing that opportunity, and then where it's brought you today. So it's just a great story. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been truly interesting and enjoyable, and I'm certain that our viewers and our listeners took lots away from today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Simon. Thanks all.
Absolutely our pleasure. Thank you so much, Ryan. And again, to all our listeners, this is an opportunity for us all to interact. We'd love to hear your stories, good, bad, the ugly, sharing those opportunities, sharing tips. Again, this community is great for being able to help one another. So please do like, share and comment within this feed. I would love to hear your stories, but thank you all for joining us on another mastery mission.